Thank y'all so much for joining us. Thank y'all for rocking out with us. You can see everyone like coming in the conversation. So we're about to get started soon. We're gonna wait like maybe a couple of minutes so more folks can come in, but please feel free to drop your name, your pronouns, where you're from, and what brings you to the conversation in the chat. So I'm gonna share that in the chat as well. We love to see where folks are coming from. Yeah, just feel free to do that. Share your name, pronouns, where you're located, and what brings you to the convo. And we're gonna get started shortly, probably in a minute or so. Also, to let everyone know, closed captioning is enabled. So please use the closed captioning option at the bottom if need be. Hey, Robin from Compton, California, USA. Thank you so much for being here. Hello, Mona. Hi. Oh my gosh, Mona, how are you? I'm so excited for this conversation. I'm eager to learn more about Afro-Italian feminism, love and solidarity. I'm in Montreal at the moment. Wow, thank you so much for being here, Mona. So exciting. Hi, Tony from North Carolina. I want to include Afro-Italian feminisms into my dissertation. Wow, amazing. Hi, Ashanti Golar, founder of the Brown Girls Guide to Politics, a blog and podcast. We focus on amplifying the voices of Black, Brown, and Indigenous women, women of color who are in politics and care about politics. Amazing, thank you. Michelle from New Jersey, I'm very excited to learn about the experiences of panelists. Ifiani, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Please forgive me if I'm not. Here to hear some insights from the brilliant Mistira Allison. Yes, we about to hear some insights, okay. Okay, so hi y'all, chilling here in Scotland, doing my PhD on Black women's mental health with art and autoethnography, Black and Indigenous radical feminism. Thank you. So I'm gonna read a couple more, we're gonna get started. Candace from Brooklyn, married to an Italian, having experiences in a mixed cultural family and preparing to live in dual countries. Wow, Ohio, Portland. So we're all in here from all over. So this is super, super excited. Feel free to add more about your name, your pronouns, where you're from, and what brings you here, but I'm about to get started. And we're super excited about this event on Afro-Italian Feminists Speak on Citizenship, Activism, and Politics. My name is Jamie Swift. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the executive director of Black Radicals. And if you're not familiar with Black Radicals, we are a Black feminist advocacy organization, and we are dedicated to uplifting and centering Black women and gender expansive people's radical activism around the world. And so this event is super exciting, even more so, not only because of our esteemed panelists and guests, but this event is a part of a larger series that Black women radicals host titled Afro-Feminisms in Europe. And that series is simply a political interrogation, meditation, and an acknowledgement and celebration of Afro-feminisms and Black feminisms in Europe. So other events in our series include Black Deaf Justice in Europe with Lydia Gratis. We did an event on Afro-German women's movement building with Ms. Abena Adamako and Dr. Tiffany Florville, and amongst other events. And you can check that out on blackmaradicals.com. And so before we get started, I really want to establish the space, that this is a safe space, right? I do this all the time. So we do not accept any homophobia, queerphobia, transphobia, xenophobia, ableism, you name it, we don't accept it. And if you can't abide by it, I will kick you out, period, okay? Oh, you see that drop, period. My job, okay, I'm being a little silly today, but seriously, Black Women Radicals events are free and open to the public. And we want to ensure that we continue these events and honor our guests and honor our space, right? This amazing space. So I'm excited to get started to introduce our amazing guests. And also I want to share with you in the chat that if, please follow our guests on Instagram. They do amazing, amazing work. And if something resonates with you, please tweet us at the Black Men Radical on Twitter, and use the hashtag Afrofeminisms in Europe. So let's get started, y'all. I'm super excited to introduce our first guest, Susanna Owusu Chuma. She, her is the Ghanaian born in Italy. She is currently a postgraduate student in the MA Migration and Diaspora Studies at the School of Oriental and African Studies, and has a BA in International Cooperation and Development Studies at the University of Rome, La Sapienza. She is a development, diversity, and diaspora consultant for national and international organizations. She has 4 years experience working as a communication specialist for the National Summit of Diasporas, which was fueled by the Italian Agency for Development Cooperation. Her job there allowed her to come into contact with some of the innovative, entrepreneurial, and associative experiences carried out by diaspora organizations in Italy over the past 20 years. She's an activist fighting against all forms of discrimination in Italy, and is really interested in sharing knowledge about Black people, Blackness, and about the diasporic consciousness in Italy. So Susanna, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jamie.
Next up, we have Kwanzi Musi dos Santos. She, her is an Italian Afro-Brazilian activist based in Rome, and is the co-founder of the cultural association Queste Roma, that since 2013 fights to erase any form of discrimination through culture and art. She holds a bachelor degree in political science and international relations at the Roma Tre University, and she is currently completing a master's in management of cultural diversity at Tilburg University in the Netherlands. She organizes conferences and workshops on diversity and inclusion with a special focus on racialized people and intersectionality, and she collaborates as a consultant for enterprises and interracial adoption organizations. Lately, she has taught about Black Italy at the previous 3 editions of the Black Europe Summer School in Europe Summer School in Amsterdam, excuse me. And she was featured on a Vice News documentary about Black Lives Matter in Italy. So Kwanzaa, thank you so much for being here. Next up, we have.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also check out that documentary. And also I want to shout out really quickly Fatima Ali for connecting Susanna, Salam, and Kwanzaa together, and Dr. Beverly Bryan for introducing me to Mistira. So yeah, we have a lot of connections going on. So next up, we have Salam Tesfaye. She, her, was born and raised in Milan. Her father, a Marxist involved in the Eritrean Liberation Front, and her mother, a wise, pragmatic African woman, moved to Milan in the middle of the 1970s. If people would ask her what she does, she wouldn't know what to say, but people like definitions, so she says, I'm a human rights activist. Sorry, Salam, for asking you for a bio. She's a member of Cantere, a political organization based in Milan, a rebellious community of people that daily fight to take back their rights and live with dignity against a system that would better like to rip them apart. Her aim is to keep this community alive. So Salam, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everybody.
And last, but certainly not least, so happy to have Mistira Allison be here with us. She, her is the founder of Ashiko. She's an independent researcher, curator, and art historian. She has delivered projects with the National Gallery in Rome, Victoria and Albert Museum, and Serendipity. Mistira's practices on the curation of cultural heritage has ignited a natural advocacy for diversity in the arts and its programming. So glad Dr. Beverly Bryan connected us, and we're all here. So really,
Thank you. Hi.
So happy you're here.
Thank you so much, Amy.
So of course, so let's get it started, because literally there's so many questions, and I foresee this conversation probably being another conversation because there's a lot to talk about Black Italy. And the first segment of this conversation will really talk about the erasure of Black communities in Italy. So when many people think about Italy, they think of, stereotypical imagery, probably food, wine, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and so forth and so on. And so many often do not think that Black people even exist in the country. So do y'all mind sharing what are some misconceptions about Blackness in Italy? And don't be scared, y'all. Anyone can just hop in. Just hop in.
All right, let me break this ice already because I'm Aquarius. Everybody knows Aquarius is officially the icebreaker. So, first of all, thank you again for this invitation. It's an honor to be here with some of my friends and colleagues and co-fighters. And it's a pleasure to meet Mistura as well. It's strange to have these connections by people from outside our community, but this is really amazing. So what about Black Italy? It goes way back. If you would have asked me this question like 5 years ago, I would have told you that Black Italians go back to the 1900 years. But in fact, thanks to some research that some pioneers are doing and some scholars, we know that actually there's evidences of presence of Black Italians way back to the Middle Age, to the Renaissance period. So that would be during the 1500, 1400. And this is amazing. And this is also very insightful already because you see how the Black Italian history has been constantly hidden and systematically hidden by those who write the story, right? Because we know that the history is always written by someone who's always biased towards the way the things, the events that happened actually took place and what people were actually involved in all these things. And this is totally valid also for the case of Italy, where even us that we've been, you know, in the scene, researching, documenting, looking for any kind of sources, only in 2021 we come to find out that actually we do have evidences of Black Italian presence way back, like even before the construction of Italy, because we have to remember that Italy more than 150 years ago didn't exist as a nation, as a state. And so it was basically completely divided into little states or sub-states owned by the other European countries and nations. And so Black Italians existed even before Italy existed. And this is very powerful. And we really need to bring up this story so much. So again, I thank you for this occasion, for bringing up these stories. And yeah, I'm excited to see how maybe in another 5 years we will have more and more evidences. We will have Black Italian stories told in the books, in the school books, and we will be able to have everything documented and evident as it should be. Whereas for now, we still learn about the Romanian Empire, how great we were during like 2,000 years ago. And this is very, this is something that goes against the empowerment of Black Italians nowadays. And I think that this narrative is progressively changing, thank God, thanks to these discoveries that are coming, and thanks to the work that we're trying to do to, you know, bring up these stories and to state our presence, our existence as a resistance, for sure. So this is really important to highlight, because really we are in a status at the moment where really our presence is constantly put in doubt. Where you're really from? Oh, so when did you arrive here? You don't belong here. There's no such a thing as Black Italians. We've seen that with Balotelli. We've seen that with many other episodes. So again, our existence is resistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwanzaa, for starting us off with that. And I thank you for also even bringing up the following part. And I would love our, Susanna, Mistira, Salam to chime in. I also would like to hear, like, Kwanzaa mentioned, questioning, like, what are you from Italy, or where do you come from, or that you can't even be Italian. So can you also talk about, what are misconceptions about being Black in Italy, and also like any experiences that you've had about making it seem like you don't belong, where you're from.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I just add something. First of all, I want to thank you for creating this space. I think it's important as Black people to share some, let's say, struggles, but at the same time to find inspiration, to keep fighting. So it's really important, and I'm really excited to be here. So about, let's say, the last question that I just mentioned, I think it's really important also to highlight that from the outside, they don't know that we exist as Black Italians, okay? And this is also due for the lack of representation, maybe in traditional media, such as TVs, radios, and newspapers in general. And another funny thing is that we do not exist according to the population in Italy as well, because there are no such Black Italians, as Kwanzaa were also saying. And excuse me if I abuse of this term, Black Italians. We do have, let's say, other terms to refer to ourselves, but I would just abuse of this term to keep the conversation clear and fast. So I believe there is this common negative, bad image of Black people and Black subjectivities in Italy. I think there is still this image of people that come to steal jobs, that are dirty and commit crimes. There is a narration that we all know that comes from history. So it's not something that it's something about our contemporary world, but it's something that comes from our history. So I think and I believe that one of the big misconception as Black people is that people believe that Black people are not entitled to do, for example, high skills jobs in Italy. So this creates a lot of problems. To state one, from not hiring Black people for certain positions, or to doubt about our skills. I remember just last year, we read about the news of a judge that asked a Black lawyer if he really had a degree. So just imagine how this image of people not having high skills, and I mean, you have in front of you a lawyer and you're still asking him if he has a degree. Let's say that there was another episode a few years ago of a person that didn't want to be assisted by a Black doctor because she didn't believe that he was a doctor. So we still live those kind of daily discriminations, and I think it's really affecting us as Black communities, because you don't believe that someday you can be a doctor or any other job that is considered a high skill, because you don't see it. So you don't see it when you walk, let's say, around the cities. Maybe now the situation is quite different, but it's not common, let's say. And from the other end, there is this continuous a reminder that we cannot be doctors, we cannot work in public spaces. So let's say that it means a lot to be Black in Italy, that we can be proud of, we can discover our identities, we can do a lot, but at the same time, daily discriminations will remind you that people don't really believe in you. I will just leave it there, and then maybe my colleagues can follow.
Yes, thank you for that context. And Mistira and Salam, please hop in. Would love to hear your thoughts.
I just wanted to echo Kwanzaa's words. I think one of the misconception about Blackness in Italy is purely presence. So the very thought that we're there is a misconception, right? So there is not a Black body living and thriving in Italy that hasn't been asked, but where are you really, really from? Like you can't possibly be from the same village that I'm from. You can't possibly be from the same city that I'm from. And then even though all you known for most people is just Italy, that's the only soil that you've known. But one thing about Italy as a nation and the political climate, it's very much about legacy and lineage and blood. So you can't possibly be Italian because you're not white. So you can't possibly be Italian because, oh, wait, how can't you be Italian if you're Black? That doesn't make sense to my, my visual imagery of what an Italian person looks like. Even if we were to stereotypically think about an Italian, you wouldn't think about us as a concept, And I think that's one of the biggest misconception is purely presence. And as Kwanzaa said, Italy as a nation is very young, is just celebrating 150 odd years of existence. When actually, if we're going to rave about legacy and lineage, the first Duke of Florence was a Black man. And we don't hear about that. The first Black ruler in Europe was a Black man. And even as people who love culture and art, and fashion, the Medici family was one of the most important families in Italy during the Renaissance. And even when you go to the Uffizi, he has 2 portraits at the Uffizi Gallery. And this is the curator jumping, he's positioned in a way where he is obscured. And, you wouldn't even be able to have directions, at least as of 5 years ago, to say, oh, can I go and see the Alessandro de Medici's portrait? They'll be like, who? And that's the first Duke, given that Florence was a republic prior to transitioning into a different political structure. So presence, I think, is one of the biggest misconceptions. And we constantly get asked, where are you really from? And it gets exhausting. It gets exhausting. And sometimes it depends on the energy levels as well. Sometimes you play a game and, you just try and go as little. So you start from the region, then you start from the city, then you go into but sometimes you don't have time and then you just ignore, or they're fascinated by how well you can conjugate your verbs and you're so eloquent, for being Black. So that's that's one of the many misconceptions.
Yeah, and it's probably very taxing to have to deal with that all the time, mentally, emotionally, all of it. So Silam, please feel free to share your thoughts. Super excited to hear what you have to say.
Sorry if you would see me walking, because that's to me the best way to get focused. Anyway, I hope it doesn't bother you. On this point, I think I would say that the question where you come from is actually, of course, like a very annoying and bothering question because it has a lot of bias. It shows that the person you have in front of you has a misconception. And it's not allowing you to express yourself fully, because of course, if I say to you, I'm from Milan, if you ask me where you were born, for example, that would be different, So sometimes I think that these questions that non-white people, like white people, would never understand what's the sense of being questioned about where you come from so exhaustingly. It's the fact that we, in my opinion, we develop our identity also on this question. When you're young, you think like, how can I answer? Like, where do I come from? Because I know where I come from. I know where my family is. I'm Eritrean. I'm not like I don't have. I have roots. I have a culture. I have some base. And my mother, for example, always tell me like, I know where I come from. I don't care if Italian accept me or not, because I'm Eritrean. I know what I am. But you are born here, so I understand that for you it's not fair not to be accepted. And especially, I guess that when we say about Black Italians, and I'm very, very happy that you called us, because it means we matter. In the Black worldwide community, we matter, and we never did. And that's also something, you know. Of course, like the recent migrations are not before, like my family, for example, comes in the middle of the 70s. There were not a lot of Black people, you know, and we are ex-colony, but our migration is not considered ex-colony migrating to. You know, there's a lot of, let's try to forget, but especially when I go and I studied and I try to decolonize also my city, which doesn't look to be so much connected to a colonialism experience. But in reality, it is. And in reality, my family that comes here came here with a legacy of work that was the slavery. My mom, they tried to enslave her a lot of times. She had to run from places of work, like saying, I'm not your slave, I'm not your slave, and being called and being treated as she was nothing. So they tried to dehumanize the first Black people that came to Italy, especially those ones that were coming from the colony, because that's what so, I mean, this mentality, it's unspoken. It's like nobody spoke about it, you know? So we need to get deep inside our stories, family history, our pain, in order to show how the racism history of Italy has been developing, because of course that's their roots. So the roots of Italy, it's totally, and the roots of how you become an Italian citizenship, it's really, really racist, and it's really the anti-Blackness. That's what so Black Italian, that's why they didn't want us to exist. Of course, now we are very prepared. We study a lot. We are like super connected. We're trying to be visible inside ourselves. So we are trying now to recreate a space for ourselves, to build up ourselves, and to be ready to attack the racism institutions.
Wow, thank you so much for everyone sharing their thoughts. And I just want to read what Marika had to say in the chat. The question itself, in terms of where are you from, is limiting and problematic. It assumes a one-size-fits-all response that doesn't typically apply to Afro-Italians as well as Italians living in the diaspora. I identify as the latter. A better question would be what is your story, and would you care telling me about some of it? So thank you. And also folks in the comments, thank you to Salam for bringing up Italian colonialism. And then we're gonna, Salam, you also mentioned citizenship, and that's like the next, we're about to flow into that next part of the question. And I remember speaking with Kwanzaa, Salam, and Susanna in the beginning, and they were like, oh, when we start to talk about citizenship, like that could be a whole conversation within itself. And Mistira, I know that the same thing with you, based on our conversations as well. So the next, subhead or theme of the conversation is citizen or not non-citizen, the fight for citizenry or citizenship in Italy. And so all of you, and you can feel free to jump in, do you mind sharing more about citizenship policies in Italy, and how these policies gravely impact Black communities in Italy, but also in the diaspora?
So thank you, Salam, for bringing that up indeed, because it actually all starts from there, because also timely wise, how can I say, the golden era of racism in Italy started on the same years of when this current law on citizenship was made. So it's strictly related. So as Salam was saying, Italy is a very peculiar country, first of all. It cannot be compared to any other European country. First of all, because as we said, it's not a century-old country. It's the only country in Europe that is so young. And so Italy still has to build the nation and the nationality and the conception, the concept of being Italian and what does it mean, because it hasn't really been discussed deeply yet. And it just was always being built upon boundaries. So basically, as same as racism, so Black bodies or POC bodies are built as a consequence to, as an opposition to whiteness, is the same with Italian nationality. It has been built in opposition to something else. And at the beginning, this something else was Southern Italy, because it's very similar to North and South in the US as the dynamics, if we want to generalize a bit. But it has really been always like an opposition to something else. And so when the Southern Italian question became more fluid because of internal migration, because of external migration, and all these things, then slowly but steadily, the new invader, the new, let's say, the enemy, the new social enemy, started to become the Black person. First, the Albanian, the Romanian, and now in the recent years, more and more the Black people. So at the beginning, as Salam was saying, in the 70s and 80s, because of the economical boom that Italy reached, starting from the 60s onwards, all of a sudden Italy needed a lot of people to work, right? And so half of Italy had emigrated to the US, to the Americas, to Australia. And so they had to bring in as many people as possible to work, to put them on work, right? And so these people were Filipinos, Cape Verdean women, Eritrean women, and mostly they were doing, the working in the care sector. And if you talk to these women, the Italian society that they tell you is like the total opposite of what we see nowadays. The Italians were super welcoming, super curious. Of course, they were also fetishizing the black woman body, but indeed, it was definitely a less hostile atmosphere. And then slowly it started to come the crisis, the economic crisis again. And so the foreigners again came to be the enemies and the invaders. And if we follow the timeline, we arrived to the 90s, where the crisis was on a peak of the crisis. And when the Italian legislators realized that these women were not going to stay here just for temporary time, but they really wanted to stay here, build their families here, build their legacy here. And so they became a problem, because then came the question of the Italian race. How do we preserve the Italian race that is inherently white, right? Even though the Italians, we all know that they're called the Black Italians in the US, because compared to the highest whiteness, let's say, they are definitely darker, right? But then if you put in comparison with people of African descent or other parts of the world, of course, you do have, again, this myth of whiteness coming up again. And that's exactly when the current law on citizenship was conceived in 1992. And it's definitely based on blood, which is historically the excellence of the scientific racism. because it's basing the belonging, the identity, the citizenship on blood, on biological features, right? So if you have Italian blood, you are Italian, no matter who in your lineage, in your family lineage was Italian. But if you're not, if you cannot prove this blood, and so this biological connection, you out.
Wow. Thank you for contextualizing that. Susanna, would you like to follow up with that?
Yes, I just want to say something about how you can actually become Italian, so the audience can understand why we talk about citizenship and why we want the Italian state to change this. So you can become Italian by descent. Means that if you have like one of the two parents is Italian, obviously you can become Italian. By naturalization, which means that foreign residents in Italy can, after 10 years of being in Italy, or after being born here, and after 18 years, they can actually ask for the Italian citizenship. And obviously you have to demonstrate that you were here for the 10 years for the 18 years. So I became Italian, for example, by naturalization. When I turned 18, I went to all my schools to get my certifications to demonstrate that I was actually in Italy. And let's say that the third way we can gain citizenship is through marriage. So as to respond to your question, you were asking how is this impacting us as Black communities, but in general, as people with a migrant background. I think it's fundamental to highlight that is impacting us in the sense that is making us invisible to the country we were born in. Imagine me being here for 18 years and not recognized as an Italian. I think it doesn't help to create a sense of belonging to the place that we consider in so many ways our home. And I think it's important also to understand that there is a continual exclusion from the political and from the public life of Italy. Something that we mentioned, a very, let's say, simple example is that when we were in school, we were not allowed to participate to school trips outside Italy. And we know that that is part of you living your school experience with your peers. So obviously you don't have the Italian citizenship. You're not able to go outside the country without spending more. Or for example, there is no way you can participate to official sport competitions. So it's like, it's technically excluding you, and it's technically one of the, let's say, the main tools to exclude non-white communities. So it's really important to understand how you can actually gain it and how you are excluded from the society you consider yours.
Wow. Yeah, when I first watched that documentary, I think Kwanzaa you were in, and Salam you were both in. I was really shocked that, here in the United States, if you're born here, you're a citizen, and to hear that, like, you have to prove your citizenship, is it's just like it's absolutely, like Ali said, wild to have to contend with. And Mistira and Salam, did you want to comment about how these horrible citizenship policies impact Black communities in Italy and in the diaspora?
Sorry. I think that one of the things that impacted me more in my life was the citizenship, because in my family, as a story of my life, my sister doesn't have the citizenship, and on her permit of stay, there is written, born in 15 August 19 blah blah blah, and sorry, but she's concerned about age, and date of arrival in Italy, the same day. So she has born in Italy, but she arrived in Italy in the same day. This is illogical. So this shows you how much tricky can be to lose the possibility to access to the citizenship. Because right now, until you're 18, if you are born here, if you didn't have any long time, more than 6 months abroad, if you did the schools here, if your parents were legally working here with all the documents that are also tricky documents and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you need to be perfect. So for example, bureaucracy for Black people, it's a mess. We grew up with the fear, with the stress, with the mental illness connected to bureaucracy. I cannot think about taking an appointment for any office. I got stressed out. I tried to schedule it late. I don't want to go in. I mean, there is a lot of issue around it. We are used as children, even if we will have the citizenship at 18. We only have 1 year of window time to ask for the citizenship. Even if we are born here, even if we have been regularly here, even if we follow all the tricky things they want us to follow, which means also not to be catched by police before 18, which is something like our family are concerned about what we do, how we act, how we behave. And that's something that that really stay in all your life. And then at the end, you have the idea of, okay, now I deserve it. Now I deserve the citizenship. I'm Italian. You never think you're not Italian. Of course you think you're Black. Of course you think racism exists. Of course somebody tells you you're not Italian. But when the state denies you that, that's awful. That's the moment you realize nobody is gonna be on your side. Nobody is gonna be legally on your side. So that you need to struggle also on the major legal system you can confront from. And so my story is different from my sister. My sister doesn't have the citizenship. She's traumatized by that. She's not applying for that. But what I want to say is that by studying it, which is the first thing I started to study when I started to approach to institutional racism in Italy, was the citizenship and migrants law. And they are very connected, weirdly connected, because of course we are considered the child of the migrants. So the their children, like they don't want us to have full rights, because of course they don't want our parents or other migrants to have full rights, and they know we are a threat to that. No, you cannot apply for the passport. If you don't have the Italian citizenship, you cannot have an Italian passport. So you don't have an European passport. You can have your own country passport if your own country, like your family country, allowed you to have a passport. So for example, in my opinion, I had Eritrean passport until I was 18. At 18, after applying for the Italian citizenship, that I obtained it in very like 1 day or 1 week, not difficult. Then I asked for the Italian passport. That was my first passport that I received in 19 years old. And what I wanted to tell is that why this law is made like this, it's because of colonialism. That was the first moment Italian government and institution get in front of the idea of having Black children, of mixed race children. That was a problem. Those people could not be Italian. So they started to develop the law in order to force people not to be able to apply, not to be able to be considered. Because of course, like in my family, there are mixed race children, Italian, white Italian, and Black Eritrean or Black Italian. So I mean, we are Italian since a long time. For example, my family, and since a lot of generations. But that's the point. So I'm gonna stop on this.
Thank you so much for sharing and providing even grander context. And Mistira, did you want to add to this question?
Thank you so much, guys, for sharing. I think my experience was slightly different. I think when I think back about my childhood, I grew up and I was raised in this protective bubble where these experiences were not experiences that I had to think about at all or actually felt on my immediate skin. I'm sure that my mom would tell you different stories. But I think in a way though, even though I didn't experience, the queuing at the consulate to renew your permit to stay, even though you literally came out of your mother's womb on the same soil as your classmate. I feel like it affects for people that were born with Italian citizenship. There is this, I guess, rewiring that happens where you are deemed as not like the others. So you grow up thinking, wait, I'm not like the others though. When you ask me where I'm from, my only answer is the only answer that I know, which is Italian. But as Selim mentioned earlier, I was blessed to have been brought up by a Yoruba babe, a Nigerian, very, very proud Nigerian woman, and where I grew up knowing how to speak Yoruba, knowing how to speak Italian, knowing sort of how to speak in English. My English was, yeah, let's not talk about it. So in that sense, when we talk about identity building, I had a very strong identity where you could not check me. If you ask me where I'm from, I will tell you both lineages. I will tell you where I'm hailed from in. Wow, the devil is really a liar because I would my ancestors are stronger. I will speak. I grew up being able to say that I am Nigerian, I am Yoruba, I am Italian, and I come from Medole, and then it's a little town in the province of Mantua. But then I think I can't help but think about the experiences of others like me that sort of grow up thinking, oh wait, I'm not like my brothers and sisters. I grew up with Italian, so there is this, I guess, race that inevitably happens where and race of entitlement, that you're like, oh wait, I belong here, I've got the papers to prove it, and it's twisted, and it's another form of brainwashing. It's another form of colonialism of the brain and of how we think and how we relate, that I've witnessed and I've seen. And it's honestly, when they say that education truly start from home, they really mean it. And I'm really deeply grateful for the upbringing that I had in a way where I never had to question my identity in that sense. But it's almost schizophrenic though, because I'm not saying that you've never had questions about, especially growing up as a teenager, you're always constantly questioning your identity, and if you ask me, when I was 10, for instance, Afro-Italian as a label, I didn't have that to define myself. I'm 26. So 16 years ago, I did not have a label to say, oh, hey, I don't even have to tell you all my ancestors' history. I'm Afro-Italian, period. I didn't have that. And that's why we're constantly, by having conversation, I didn't even have a chance to thank you for opening this platform. By having conversations like this, we're actively archiving and actively creating language to define ourselves. And then also remember, Susanna briefly mentioned, also remembering that Afro-Italian is not their own label, because there is also the argument that you're pitting a whole continent with a country together. So some people identify, for instance, I would say I'm Italo-Nigerian, for instance, which makes it more balanced. So there are so many, we're actively creating language. And I think that is so important to be able to define yourself. And it's all goes hand in hand with the politics of it all and the bureaucracy of it all. And I am so grateful for the fighters that are constantly challenging this notion, because the citizenship is important, as Selim and Kwanzaa and Susanna mentioned, because it goes beyond the paper. We need to think about the barriers they create. Susanna said, by not having Italian citizenship, it goes beyond Italian, because obviously Italy is in Europe, which means that you can't freely move in Europe, which means when your classmates are going for that ski trip in Switzerland, you can't go. You're in the classroom with your RE teacher, going through like, I don't know, whatever Jesus did, you don't get to share those experiences, and that's not my story, but there are so many that are being excluded. And it also means that you don't have access to the same jobs. It also means that you don't have the same further education, because you have to pay extra because you're not Italian. There is so many things. And then generally when they ask you, but where are you really from? You came from your mother's womb. That's where you came from. The point of entry is your mother's womb on this Italian soil. So what are we really doing here? So when we have activists and politicians fighting for jus soli, which is of the land, rather than jus sanguinis as it operates in places like America, for instance, it really does matter. It really does matter, and there's just so many barriers. It doesn't matter if you speak eloquently. It doesn't matter if you speak the dialect. It doesn't matter if all you know is Italy. If you don't have the papers, you will never. And even if you have the papers, you're already being, you're also not already considered. You're also being side-eyed as, you're not on impact. You're not considered Italian. So even if you have all the check marks, you're still being side-eyed. So imagine when you don't have one missing ingredient in this gumbo. It's long. It's really long.
No, but thank you, because it shows like the layers and levels to this. And honestly, I'm trying to make sure I have everyone pinned so everyone can see everyone, because I've been doing it from a speaker view, but to give this important context, right? And like the layers of exclusion. I think someone mentioned like the psychological, mental, emotional exclusion of not being considered non-citizen. Like, I didn't know that, in school you weren't able to travel. I couldn't, it's unfathomable and very disturbing. And so thank y'all for sharing your experiences with that. And I would like to I have other questions, but I would like to talk about particularly, I have other questions in terms of citizen and non-citizen, right? And like, there was a lot of work last year in terms of, everyone was in solidarity with George Floyd around the world, but also too, I believe her name is Ariam Tekel. She's the Afro-Italian filmmaker. She said that while we stand in solidarity with, George Floyd and the uprisings, it's important to know that anti-Black police violence happens in Italy as well. And there were also protests to talk about Black Lives Mattering in Italy. And do you mind quickly touching on that before we move into our next segment on Black feminist consciousness and like the joy of movement building with one another? But I also know that we have questions, y'all, too. So listen, people are excited. But anyway, do you mind sharing a little bit more about the protests that happened last year in Italy to center police violence in the country?
Well, I'm not gonna lie. You said it's a safe space, so I will say all the truth about what I think about what happened. I was very pissed off, to be honest. My first reaction was pissed off when I saw how a completely unknown Black man on the other side of the ocean can move consciousness and awareness and and this will to protest and to, you know, to bring up our voices more than all the work that we've been doing here for years and years. So I was very pissed off, both towards the white Italian community and towards the Black Italian community. Um, but then I also thought that it could be a great chance, a great occasion to, you know, find finally that loudspeaker to highlight our situation. Because so far we've been silenced systemically, we've been, you know, treated as overreacting, as victims, as, you know, people that don't want to integrate. Oh, you're never happy. What you complaining about, you know, and all these things, right? Because we have public healthcare system, so you're set up, right? You don't need much more. And so we try to take advantage of this situation mediatically, you know. And it was really interesting to see. I was very happy to see how people very young went on the streets, and they were both white and POC Italians. And this was really, really powerful for me because I saw how no matter how it goes with our fights that we're constantly trying to bring up, it's also just a matter of time because the new generation is already changing the narrative, is already living in another situation simply by presence, right? Because we're more and more present in terms of numbers. And so it's very rare nowadays that a teenager, a white Italian teenager, doesn't have a Black classmate. And so this creates already that normalization that we're seeking because our situation was different. Like having even a second Black person in the entire school was an event, right? Was so rare. And so just because of that, I'm already a bit, you know, relieved. At the same time, though, we cannot banalize, making this situation banal and simplify by always looking up at the States as the most progressive country in terms of, you know, civilization, in terms of human rights and anti-racism, because this is just throwing sands on our eyes instead of looking up at the situation here that has complete different aspects that we have to tackle. As we said, the citizenship is totally the opposite towards the US. So how can we talk about police brutality and ethnic profiling if we don't talk about first, again, how you become a citizen, how you are recognized officially as an Italian? Because it all stems from there. And so it's also interesting to see how, again, this comparison brought to putting alike the situation of police brutality in general in Italy that we have towards white people and Black people. So we don't have like this strict related ethnic profiling. We do have these events happening, but we also don't have the possibility to track actually these happenings because we don't have ethnic census. So once you're Italian, we don't know if you're Black, Asian, whatever your origins are. They only we're only let's say classified according to nationality. So we don't have the possibility to actually state that we have ethnic profiling strictly related to police brutality. And on the other hand, we do have a problem with classism, a problem with you know, the police being a sector that has no formation whatsoever, no education whatsoever. It's just, you just have to study to become, you know, a policeman, but there's nothing concerning sociology or whatsoever. You only study the law, right? And so there's no preparation of these people to actually understand the society with all these contradictions and being able to actually defend them in the right terms. And it was interesting to see how a lot of people, both white and Black Italians, starting to associate what happened to George Floyd to what happened to Stefano Cucchi. You can find the movie on Netflix as well. It's Sulla mia pelle, I think the name, On My Skin. And a lot of people, Stefano Cucchi is a white Italian of low income. He was a drug dealer. He was a cocaine addict, and he was associated with George Floyd just because of police brutality. So racism was completely erased from the picture. And this is because we still have to really tackle a conversation on what is racism and how it manifests in the context of Italy without coming with, you know, notions taken from other countries and then put here, just copy and paste. It doesn't do the work.
Well, this is definitely a safe space, and thank you for sharing that, because this is why we have these events, because oftentimes, because Black Americans are like, you know, many of us were forced to come here, right? We so happen to be in the middle of the superpower, and like our news, our politics, our thoughts, our ideas, even our feminisms are seen as like at the forefront when they're Black people from around the world, right? Even there's Black migrants in the United States, right, who have problems assessing citizenship. And they're often erased from the context of being, when we have these discussions as well. So thank you for sharing that, like mic drop, and we need to hear it. And we need to be honest about the conversation. You cannot copy and paste. Just because we're Black doesn't mean that we all have the same experiences, the same background. We have different ways of being and thinking. And I think for those, even myself, I'll use myself, this has been a decolonizing process, because we are not even taught about ourselves, let alone that there's Black people in Italy, right? Or Black people in Brazil. So thank you so much for sharing that. Does anyone else want to chime in really quickly before we move on to the next segment of the conversation?
Oh, go, Susanna.
No, go, Salam. I was just wanted to say something about you, so just go, please.
About?
I just wanted to add something about you, but just go on, and then I will just add it when you're done.
About you.
About you, Salam.
Okay.
Go on, please.
And then I get curious, you know. So okay. So I think I didn't have the feeling of being pissed off. And I'm gonna say why. Because of course, like media coverage works in a certain sense. Black Lives Matter has been used as a brand, and especially here, they try to use it as a way to wash themselves, wash their consciousness and everything, you know, so especially in Europe. But first of all, thank you, Black Lives Matter movement. Thank you, Black grassroots movement in the United States for being radical, for not accepting, and for after the death of of the killing of numbers of Black people, for being able to radicalize the struggle, the anti-racist struggle, and that especially in these in what I call the second wave of Black Lives Matter, so the one that started, or maybe that mobilized more after the death of George Floyd. That was like after Breonna Taylor. I mean, there was like a number of that increased, but of course, like the one of George Floyd made, you know, the worldwide movement. But the thing is that why worldwide? Because the idea was like, we are fighting against systemic racism. We're not only fighting for police brutality in the United States, we're fighting and we're claiming other movements to unite and to talk about institutionalized and systemic racism. And that system has to fall down. And that's something that we still don't want to admit in our lives, in our lifestyle, in our agenda. It's difficult. And I don't think that minorities can take this burden by themselves, because there are a lot of struggle connected to the death of this system. But I felt less alone. I found a community. I found a Black radical community, political. You know, my Black community was a community that never loved me before, because it was the community of Eritrean people living in Italy with all their trauma, with all their fear, with all their community connected to ethnicity, connected to cultural, connected to parenthood, connected to shit. It was a shitty place to grow up. My mom didn't want me to grow up with Eritrean people because she saw what could happen, because that's a toxic community. The community you want, you choose it. And to choose it, you need to go around and see what you like all over around. So I now have a community. I have sisters. I don't only have some sisters around Italy. I have sisters also in my town in Milan. I'm happy. We're growing, and that's the infinite game. So I don't see an ending in this, but I see a building. So what I really appreciate is that I think we can build up something from that. Of course, to us, it was important. We didn't gain this space. It was important to say, hey, Black Lives Matter in Italy, you know what does it mean? It means citizenship. It means migrants respected. It means that our mothers and our fathers and our people cannot work in the labor market like you want them to work, like slave or less paid or less respected. That's what it means to us. Did the mainstream listen to us? Not at all, but they never did. So that's we're gonna have our people in the mainstream saying what we want to be, what we want to hear. That's it.
Thank you so much. So powerful. Susanna?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that unfortunately we needed to get advantage of that moment, especially to be at the center of our narration. It's something that we never stress enough, but it's like most of the anti-racist movements that are in Italy are, let's say, predominantly white. So it's I think it's important to state this, because even when we went to the protests last year, or when we wanted to organize them, there was this, let's say, a lot of organizations that were trying to manipulate, the protests that we wanted to do, because we are not even used to be at the center of our narration. We are used to people talking about our struggles as Black people in Italy. So I think it was a great moment for people to hear about our problems directly from us. And the reason why I was saying that I wanted to say something about Selam is that when we organized the protest last year in Rome, I read a poem written by her where she was talking about the importance of talking about Black lives in Italy, and why the Black Lives Matters movement have a sense in Italy. So, and this, I wanted to say this because what we do as Blacks is we read a lot from Black people that are not in Italy to find inspirations, to find a lot of things, and which is great. But sometimes we do have to find inspirations from Black people that are writing about us also in Italy and also in Italian, because it's a way to define also ourselves. And I think it's really important from the point of view of terminology, but also from a point of view of how to fight racism every day. Because you cannot just copy and paste what happened in other countries and then you just do it in Italy just because it worked somewhere. So I think it's really important also to read about Black people writing, talking about our existences in Italy as well.
Thank you so much. Mistira, did you want to add a final word to that?
Absolutely. Actually, I'm just going to piggyback on Susanna's point. I feel like the movement that we saw last year, for me, being based in the UK, looking back at at Italy, it was really encouraging. I was like, oh, all of a sudden, you guys can see, you know, because it's never about the color. It's never about, it's all of a sudden color blindness was not acceptable. You had to be able to see all of this melanin that is coexisting with you. And also to piggyback, I think I will forever be the one that shouts about art. There is so much art that is being produced in this moment and that is reflecting of the society that we're living in, and it's beautiful to see. There are so many thinkers, there are so many writers, there are so many musicians, so many visual artists and not that are currently producing. And what's beautiful is that some of them are doing it with a consciousness of political consciousness, which makes it radical. And some of them are just existing. And at the end of the day, what everyone wants is to be seen, and to be able to relate. And as Salim mentioned earlier, to be able to build community is such a privilege, is such a joy. To be, it's the Afro-Italian community is so small as well. So it's beautiful to there is always a common denominator. And I personally find that beautiful because I think of us as a big family and we don't all think the same. We're not a monolith at all. We don't all act the same and we don't all like the same things as well. but the fact that we're there and we're present and we can relate to each other and we can give ourselves the nod, or ciao, or give ourselves 4 kisses on the cheek. That is beautiful. That is radical. And we're not the first to do it as well. I want to stress, we're not the first to do it, but we're the first to visibly hype it with social media, and to be able, with the advent of social media, to visibly do it in that sense, right? So for instance, my dad with the communists would protest for rights, citizenship right. This is not a new story at all. It's not a new narrative, but we don't have the archival evidence in the newspapers, for instance, of the 4 or 5 Black students that protested for citizenship rights in the 80s. We don't have evidence of that. So what's beautiful about this moment, about moments like this, about all the arts that's been created, is that we're documenting as while existing. And that's what's vital. The fact that we're archiving as we're living, we're archiving as we speak, as we move. And so in 20 years, nobody is really going to check us, hopefully. And I think that's beautiful. The fact that we're continuing to relate to each other and building different communities, that's all that it is. And I think the advent from the social justice movement of last year really, more than anything, it just amplified it. And it's unfortunate that an assassination is what it had to take. And I think that's where the anger is coming from. And the fact that it had to take a Black body being mercilessly murdered in order for you to be able to see me, in order for you to actually consider to me or think about being an ally, when actually I have been here for 20 plus years. And I think that's where the anger and the hope and the multitude of layers of emotions is coming from. And we're humans, so we're allowed to have more than one emotion. The same way I'm angry is the same way I'm hopeful, is the same way I'm joyful, yeah, that's all.
Wow, that was so beautiful. What a way to kind of transition to the other part of the conversation, because I do want to get to people's questions because there's a lot of them. And actually somebody was thinking on the same lines as me and asked my question that I had originally asked before. So I see where, the enemy was trying to knock, your AirPods out, your headphones out, but it didn't work because that Black feminist power is on, over here. So, but no, thank y'all so much for such a generative conversation. And I feel like there could be another iteration or another conversation, because I feel like we didn't, even get to cover all the questions, right? But just appreciate providing more context, and for us to be responsible to learn about other Black people around the world. Black Radicals prides itself on having an internationalist, transnational, Black feminist, anti-imperialist perspective, because if it can't just be about us in the United States, right? We have to develop different strategies and tools, and to learn from one another, build solidarity so that we can see the transformation that we are pushing for. And we can't do that with a single-minded or a single lens perspective. So thank y'all so much. So I'm about to hop into some of these questions. And one of the questions I really thought was super powerful, kind of went to my question. I'm going to combine them kind of for the sake of time. Someone asked, I'm so sorry, I'm trying to find it. Ifiani, forgive me if I'm saying your name incorrectly. What are some of the joys and pleasures of the Afro-Italian experience? What does community and solidarity look like among Afro-Italians? And I know, Mistira, you just talked about it more, but would anyone else like to chime in about what are some of the joys and pleasures of the Afro-Italian experience, and what does community and solidarity look like among Afro-Italians?
So this is something that is not only about Black Italians, but in general about Italians of foreign backgrounds. Of course, then color plays an important role. So it's easier and quicker for us to recognize ourselves like directly, immediately on color. But then often you also meet, Italians of Asian background, Italians of Romanian backgrounds. And what is very interesting, and it's very peculiar to Italy, is a strict relation with territory and local. So we all identify, I think I can speak for all of us, firstly as Roman, me, myself in this case, or Milanese, or Florent, or Sicilian, before identifying as Italian. And this goes back to also what I was saying at the beginning, that Italy is still a very, very young baby that still has to be built and unified, because it has been unified with violence only. So it has been imposed, it has been a serious civil war to unify Italy. So it has been imposed to Italians to speak Italian, to, consider themselves Italians and all these things. So this unification process is still far from happening from this point of view, but it's so beautiful to see how we can, put down this barrier of color and of nationality or of origins of our parents by all identify with the territory and with the local. That is something, as I said, very peculiar to Italy. So I think this is pretty, and it was really nice when we started also traveling a bit to see our Black Italians in other cities speaking with other accents. And I swear we've been repeating the same microaggressions that they were doing on us, saying like what, oh, but how do you speak, like what like it was really mind-blowing to see like a Black Italian face speaking with Milanese accent or any other accent that you didn't hear in your city. And as I said, accents in Italy are very strong because they go back to the original languages that were spoken in these territories that are still up and running, actually. And so you can immediately say from two words where that person was actually raised. And I think it's it's a very pretty thing to underline.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Would anyone else like to share about what are the joys of, being Afro-Italian and like building community and solidarity?
Sure, I'll go. Thank you so much, Ifeanyi. That's my sister. I think as a typical Italian, it's just I think when I think about my background, as I mentioned earlier, I'm both Italian and Nigerian. And one common thread about those two nationalities, the pride that comes with being Nigerian and with being Italian. Like, we're very proud people, especially when it comes to the culture. And, I can easily, go around and sort of say, oh, but, we're the land of the Donatello and the Michelangelo. But then the joy about the Afro-Italian experience is that I can start quoting about the Afro-Italian artists, contemporaries that are currently living, rather than just quoting about, dead artists from the 1500s. So being able to quote Black artists as people or outside of our setting as creatives that bring joy and spark joy is something that makes me so happy. Also because I recognize how important the work that they're doing is, and because also inevitably what is happening as well is a shorthand and sort of like it's sort of like a shorthand way of communicating as well. So I love how especially for instance, if you share the same background, how we can go in and out of, for instance, English, Italian, and Yoruba, in one sentence. And I think that's it's not exclusive to the Afro-Italian experience. I think it's very much something that you find in any diaspora, in any Black diaspora. But that shorthand, it's one that brings me so much joy, being able to borrow from different cultures. That's why, quite frankly, I'm not interested in being seen as just one thing, because I'm more than that one identity. I'm constantly evolving. I'm constantly a multitude of identities and cultures that are sort of, I like to think of them as armor. So I can sort of borrow, say if a word, for instance, escapes in English, I can be like, oh, I'll just say in Italian. You're Italian, so I know you understand what I'm talking about. And you can understand English, and even more bonus points if you can speak Yoruba, because maybe this banter will be bantered. So, that's what sparks joy to me, being able to interchange between cultures and having that mutual understanding, because you're not the only one. And that's what sparks joy for me.
Yes, thank y'all so much. Salam, Susanna, do you want to add really quickly before we go into the next question? Salam, you good, Susanna? Okay, thank you.
I just say that no one mentioned the food. Imagine being Italian than African. Imagine what you can create.
I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to be stereotypical, but go on, Susanna. Take the mic.
I have to say, imagine eating carbonara one day and then the next day you do like jollof. I mean,
I'm not leaving Italy. I'm fine. I can cook my homeland food. Eritrean restaurant. I like super spread in Milan. I have my mom. I have my aunt. I'm not leaving Italy. That's something irreplaceable.
Yes, I have to know about this food. Y'all gotta hook me up or something, because
the food is incredible. I'm not gonna lie. We eat good. We eat good.
I love to hear, Susanna, I needed to mention that. Sorry, no, do not apologize, because listen, one day it's like, listen, I need to know all the recipes, something, because I need some help with cooking, y'all. But anyway, so actually, this was one of the questions I had asked in the agenda point, but Tony asked, including yourselves, of course, who/what are some other scholars, activists, organizations, etc., that you recommend to keep learning about Afro, Black Italian feminism, citizenship, and more? And I'll drop that question in the chat.
I can mention two scholars that I really look up to. Namely, one is Angelica Pesarini and another one in Camilla Hawthorne, and they're doing incredible work There is it just scholars or also writers? Ijaba Shego also is an incredible writer. She writes a mix of fiction, and she is from Rome, I believe. Somebody correct me, because Romans, okay, cool, because Romans get really prickly about location. But they're incredible. But if it's worth sharing, maybe we can share like a list somewhere. But those are two that come up to mind immediately, and they're actively working currently as well.
Definitely. I'm sorry, Susanna. Go on.
Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Yes, I will also add the name of Esperance Akuziana, who wrote an amazing book about her experience as a Black woman in Italy, which is something, let's say, that can be obvious in other countries, but it's actually something special for us because we never really read about books of Black women, so it's really important. And then I also mentioned Letizia Wodrago. Maybe I can write their names in the chat, because she's doing an amazing job with the African philosophy and also history on Instagram. Like she's sharing insights in Italian. So she's doing like a kind of work of translation that can, let's say, support the Black communities in Italy, which is really important because, as I was saying, we find inspiration in the English literature, but we are trying to work on the, let's say, Italian way of creating academic, yes, and also Black Coffee podcast. Yeah, I'll write the names. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I was even thinking, usually Black Men Radicals has like these reading lists, and if you all were interested in like having a list of these amazing names, so that, and like links to their works, so people can access them, whether they're in Italian or English or not. We just need to know, and we'll figure it out. Yeah, and everything does not and should not be English based, right? Like, honestly, if you don't know, there's Google Translate that could really help, but also, people probably don't have access to that, but still, like, one of the things is the language barriers, right? And so let's try to think outside of English and just see where we can find information where we can. So, and also this gives access to other, for example, Black communities in Italy who want to have information as well. And so, yeah, thank you for dropping those in there. Salam, Kwanzaa, did you want to add any folks who people should know other than yourselves? Because y'all fly.
Thank you. No, well,
there are a lot of people, and
someone is talking.
Sorry, Kwanzita. Sorry. There is, especially I like to promote. I would love to promote now collective projects. There is a Black Coffee podcast, which is a podcast made by two Black women. One, she's Afro-Italian. She wouldn't consider herself so. She's Italian-based but Eritrean. And Emmanuel, the other one, is French background and Black. And I think that there is also Sairi, an indigenous project and collective of musicians and DJs, of women, trans feminists, and very anti-colonial. And then there is like Kirikou, which is another project of based in Milan. And there is the committee I've been part of, the committee Not to Forget Alba, against, let's say, the spreading of racial violence, especially in the public space. And with also a very hard job in the schools about telling the stories and being actively engaging other people into talking about racism in schools, because we cannot leave, we cannot wait for the institution to start some program about it. We gotta do it for ourselves, for our safety. And that's it. I'm gonna add everything in the chat. And the feminists out, yeah, that's a great job. I like it.
And also, yeah, there are a lot of Muslim sisters. There are a lot of projects on especially on Instagram. I think that the pandemic mixed with the idea of being actively engaged in the social network, especially in our communities, kind of blow in this way. So there are a lot of projects. What I believe is that we need in our territories to try to make those bridges that are on the internet as much possibly in person, because we need to be physically in contact.
Definitely. Thank you. And Kwanzaa, did you have some
No, as Salam said, there's a lot of internet, and there's also a project that we did called Fading, that you can find on my page, Susanna's page, Questeroma's page, many pages. Basically, if you write the hashtag Fading Spot, we did some little snaps videos on being Black in Italy and speaking up basically about our experiences. There's many projects, books, podcasts, events, the Festival Diversity that just took place 2 weeks ago. So there's really a lot. I think we can maybe create a list and share it with the attendees, because it might be easier. Because really, if I think about it now, it's just blow my mind. It's so much. So yeah.
Yeah, that would be so powerful. Like I mentioned, Black Women Radicals, we have reading lists. And so we just did an event on Black feminisms in Australia, or Black diaspora feminisms in Australia. And there was, suggestions, reading lists from, our guests about how to interrogate Black diaspora feminisms from an Australian perspective. And so we would love that for this conversation. And so I'm going to ask a combined 3 questions that are very similar, but some people were asking, how do y'all respond to basically, I'm just going to say it. How do you respond to ignorant, white folks who you have to contend with asking you, very either politically incorrect or racist questions? How do you navigate that space? Because one of the people mentioned, I think that they're a mix of Syrian Italian, Sargon, and was born and raised in Rome. And ever since they moved out of Italy, they've tried to engage in race discussions with Italians, but they have virtually no understanding of their own whiteness and how that comes with privilege, even people on the left. What have y'all found to be ways to manage a discussion with them that isn't draining for you and somewhat constructive for them? So 3 questions were kind of like that, so.
I think, thank you so much for the question. I think also it's very important to stress that the way we think about whiteness in the global north is not the same way that Italians think about whiteness, because as Kwanzaa mentioned earlier, there is also that sort of north and south divide. So it's more about regions rather than ethnicity. Mostly that's what the conversation is mostly like. So for instance, the response, defense response would be, oh, but if I'm from the South, I'm considered as bottom tier citizen as well. So, racism can't possibly exist in Italy for that very reason, which obviously is bullshit, pardon my French. But it depends, how do I engage with ignorance? Honestly, it depends on the mood. It depends on the energy level. I am very fluent in sarcasm, so I like to flip the coin. So the same way you're asking me where I'm really from, I will ask you, where are you from? where are you from? And the same way you're asking me, oh wait, you're so eloquent. I'm like, wow, you speak really lovely Italian too, but then that requires energy, and it's not every day that I have energy. Most times I rather sleep than engage in conversation that are going to drain my energy. And I think it's very important to also protect your space. So I just don't engage. I just look at you and be like, well, all of a sudden I can't speak the same language you're speaking, so you're going to have to speak up, love. So it depends. It depends on the energy level. But because I feel like, genuinely speaking, no seriousness, it gets to a point where ignorance is not an excuse anymore, especially in this 2021. Ignorance becomes not an excuse anymore, where we have all somewhat access to information on the internet, which, you know, ask Google, it is free. Well, you have to pay for the internet, but you get the gist. But then again, there are so many layers of conversation. Whiteness in Italy can be broken down into class as well. It's a different, white Italians in the South live a completely different experience than white Italians in the North, and is one of oppression actually as well. So that's why when Kwanzaa was saying we can't copy and paste Blackness or concept of whiteness from the States, for instance, as an example, to Italy, is because the very existence and the very relation is just not the same. And that doesn't get spoken about. And that's why systems of decolonization, of unraveling, of disruption don't work, because, hey, it's not the same fit. and that's why we need to, it's a taxing task, but we need to just keep working and just keep fighting and keep resisting, and with the language that we understand. We're probably not going to get it right, but at least it's a starting point. It's not an issue that is going to get solved anytime soon, unfortunately. Thank you.
I just wanted, sorry. I just wanted to say I second totally what Mistira said. It depends on energy. So pick your battle. Google is always there for you, babe. He's your best friend. He's always there, night and day, 7-on-7. And it actually started to become easier for me during the last couple of years, because I started delivering courses and education on diversity management, on anti-racism, on all these other things. So I strictly leave that energy for when I'm paid for it, because that's my profession. And if I'm not in my working hours, I'm just not going to engage in that conversation. And if you're really willing to prove the world that you're anti-racist and you want the tag for it, you're going to pay me, and we're going to engage in that conversation for as long time as you want. So for me, it's like easy at this moment, because it's part of my profession. So I openly chose to leave it for only my working hours.
Yo, this big energy. Oh my, I'm like over here like, woo. Salam, go ahead. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, I think that what Kwanzaa says is really important in the sense that you need to pick your battles. I, for example, decided in a very unconscious way, so I'm telling you right now in a very clear way, I decided ages ago not to deal with Italian people that are not focusing on changing, social change. And also in that case, of course, it's difficult. And of course, some things such as misogyny or racism are very alive, you know. Maybe, you know, they don't say it clearly, but of course, when they talk, you can hear, you know, and then you have to stop them. And if they listen to you without replying, for me, it's fine. It means they respect me. It means they don't think they need to educate me, because I'm not educating them. I'm not doing that job. I'm just building the chance to keep on talking, which is something that I need, as a lot of people has already said. As other people already said, the condition between Black Italian and white Italians is like, I don't know, like 1 on 100. Like, we don't have that much of a space. We're just building it now because we are few, and because, of course, we need also to engage a discussion with other communities, racialized community, marginalized community. So, for example, here in Milan, in the last event that we did, that could be under the umbrella of Black Lives Matter, ideally, or racial justice, social justice, the queer community the radical queer community was there. They were the majority of the people present as a community, a live community, which means that they know what it means to be fighting for their life. You know, it's and on a second level, I think that those are the people that I engage with, and that's the only effort that I would do. That's what I choose for myself. You know, also in a feminist approach, a lot of people say, oh, the feminism in Italy is white. I do feel it is. I do feel that a lot of also radical feminists and trans feminist environment don't think about how to create space, how to engage with, not to take somebody and ask them to be the token, but how to engage with other groups of people. But what I feel is that we need our group, we need a bit of separation, we need to build up our ideas, our feminism, and then we can confront with other people that have a totally different experience. I cannot explain to a white lady what does it mean to walk in August as a Black woman in Italy. It's not the same. I can tell you, but it's the life experience. It's like, I can tell you my pain, I can tell you my life, but and then? So, and also I'm thinking that as a woman, I learn a lot from the feminist movement. I want to bring that knowledge and to use it when I'm organizing with other women, non-white.
Thank you so much for that, Salam. Susanna, you have the last word on this one.
I honestly don't have anything to add. I'm just happy to be here and to have this conversation with my sisters, as I'm just getting emotional, so it's fine. I don't want to add anything. I just want to say thank you.
Oh, it's okay. I to be emotional, and this day has been a long time coming for us, right? I mean, literally, and you should see the tweets that people are saying, or like the comments, like they're really excited to hear and learn from you all. What you're doing is radical, we're doing is revolutionary, and like y'all are on the front lines, and I just thank y'all for your time, your leadership, your dedication. I know it's not easy, but let's just say people see you. You may not be appreciated by the greater white supremacist power structure that impacts our daily lives, but there are people, particularly Black feminists, who see your work from around the world. And so thank y'all so much. And just, we're about to wrap up soon. Oh, I always really want to say, Candace said, incredible to have been present for this amazing panel. Thank you all for creating this space today. Scarlett, I really want to read. Thank you, Scarlett, for always being so supportive of Black men radicals. I want to read their comment. They said, thank you. I've learned so much from today's webinar, and I'm truly thankful for this space, which gives us the ability to learn and build our analysis on international Black feminism. So, yeah. So I just also would like to give you all the last word to say whatever you would like to say before we close this a wonderful, powerful event.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for exchanging energy with us. You know, I think I can speak for myself. It is certainly felt, and for being so engaging. So at least it doesn't feel like we're talking just amongst ourselves. I think I just can't help but ponder and wonder how beautiful Black is, you know, and in its all shades, in its all realities and its all experiences. It's just, Blackness is so beautiful, and we in wherever, in, you know, regardless of location, we just recognize each other and we see each other. And I just want us to keep being kind to each other and keep being respectful to each other and keep being open to the fact, again, I will forever scream this, the fact that we're not a monolith, but we're beautiful, layered people. And so thank you for seeing us. And yeah, look out for the amazing projects that everyone is actively creating and constructing, we're here. That's all.
Okay, I'll go. First of all, thank you, Jamie, for the incredible work and the professional work that you put it, and the time you invested in this panel. I think that when a Black woman asks another Black woman to talk, to have a conversation, to discuss, to confront, that means being a sister, and this level of sisterhood is important because it comes from your side of the world, it's the side of the world that we looked at for so much time to try to understand and to investigate what racism is and what happened to our lives, to our mothers, to our sisters, to our ancients. We don't have the same possibility in Europe also because we speak so many languages here and the communication kind of gets difficult. So I'm wondering maybe one day we will be able to talk with Portuguese women, Black, French women, and I mean, I hope we're gonna have the chance to put our effort into making that possible and easier. And I also thank Susanna, Mistira Kwanza, for being so openly and unapologetically anti-racist, feminist, supportive, sister. I mean, each of you, I know that in your also behind the scene works to put ourselves in contact, and that's to me it's important. We need to lift each other up. We need to climb this mountain together. And that's it. Thank you, people. Also for the people that comments, the reaction were super on point. We're super happy and strong. And everybody, if you want to write, to text on Instagram or whatever, do that. It's very nice and important. And we are okay. We are happy to. I mean, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you again, Jamie, and thank you all for doing this and doing this amazing work as Black women. I just want to say it was really refreshing and it's powerful because you're not only sharing your story, but you're also learning something from the colleagues, you know. So I'm really happy for this moment. I'm happy and I'll be happy to share more. So if you have any question, any comment, do text us. And what again, just thank you. And I know that there is hope. I know that we are shaping and changing our country and we are changing this world and the narration around us. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Susanna, Mistira, Salam. Kwanzaa, I didn't want to end before giving you the final word before we go, but if you have anything you would like to say, just feel free to hop in. All right, so it's okay if you can't get on, but I also want to read a few comments before we go because I just want to revel in this moment and also for the people to, when I post this on YouTube for people to, you know, what the comments are. Christine said, I'm a Black opera singer in the US and travel to Italy often. And this was so enlightening and beautiful. Thank you, endlessly. Nichelle said, thank you so much for this. Being a multiracial Black Guyanese native Italian woman, this was wonderful to hear. Sheila said, thank you so much. I'm a Black American academic who has a close relationship with a university in Rome and travel a lot to Italy and have taught at various universities there. I don't know, Pisa, Bologna, Luis, I don't know if I'm saying them correctly. This was such a refreshing and enlightening conversation. Julie, all the way from Toronto. Thank you all from Toronto. This has been a powerful and enlightening and amazing discussion. Yeah, thank y'all so much for everything. It was I'm looking forward to doing this again. And thank you for saying yes, because you didn't have to do it. So just in all of your work And hopefully we will stay connected and continue to be connected. Oh, that's so cute. Hold on. I want to do it too. Hold on.
Do it. Let's have a social moment. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Power to the people, huh?
Yes, power to the people always, today, yesterday, forever. So thank y'all so much and talk to y'all soon. Thank you again. Please follow our guests, our panelists on Instagram. I'm about to drop their IGs now again. So please contact them, follow, support their work, donate, you know, like Kwanzaa was saying, drop them coins on them. And yeah, just support their work. So thank y'all so much again.
Thank you, Jamie.
Bye.
Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye.
Or morning.
Oh, it's 2:24 here.
Right, I thought so. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.